What's up, everybody? How are you? Welcome to The Sweat, presented by DraftKings. I am Emerson Lotzia. You guys and gals know the drill by now. God, this hoodie is so terrible on air. I don't know why I'm wearing it. If you don't know the drill, we've got about 55 minutes of DFS and betting advice coming your way. A little bit of NBA and NHL sprinkled in, but lots and lots of football, including a Monday Night Football doubleheader. Let's go. Let's normalize that, please, minus the COVID thing. But first, let's overreact to what went down yesterday around the league. Good morning to DraftKings contributors, Pierce Dietrich, Reed T. Fowler, Jeff Ulrich. No result from Sunday better symbolizes this season than the 10-win Cardinals losing to the Lions, who in Pierce's eyes are a 500 football team. Arizona is still minus 200 to win the division, guys, with Indy, Dallas, and Seattle to finish out the regular season there on the schedule. The under of 11.5 wins for Arizona, sitting at plus 130. Which one is the better bet, Jeff?
I'll take the under. I don't think that the Cardinals are in a good spot right now to necessarily to close this out. I really don't. I feel like Arizona just the injuries have caught up to them a little bit. Kyler Murray hasn't played as well down the stretch as he had at the start, and they have a very tough schedule coming up. They have the Colts and the Cowboys, and then a Seahawks team at the end that I think is going to give them a little bit more trouble than people think, just because, again, they won't have much to play for, excluding just taking out a division opponent. So I'm not very bullish on this Cardinals team, and I'll even throw this out there. If you're in agreement with me and you think the Rams have a shot here, jump on Matthew Stafford MVP odds right now. He's about to set some career highs in a lot of different stats. If the Rams win this division, I think he'll get some sentimental votes. I'm not bullish on the Cardinals finishing the season well at all.
Okay, Reed, how about you, man? How bullish are you on it?
Oh, I'm as bearish as Jeff is. I think Jeff is a little bit of a prisoner of the moment. And the Cardinals, DST are only one Cardinals on his season-long fantasy team, so he doesn't really feel extremely bullish on them.
Yeah, dude, Jeff, we know what your thing is here now, dude. Yeah. You're a fraud. We have exposed you. Every player you talk about here on this show in DFS is because he is on your season-long team. I'm coming for you, Ulrich.
It's false.
Yeah, this is attack Jeff. But going back to the question, look, their last 3 games are extremely hard, right? You got 2 teams that have the most momentum.
I have Chase Edmonds on my season-long team, by the way. So
that's why I said one. Jeff, it's not your turn anymore.
Jeff, let him talk.
Quiet. You have 2 teams, like I was saying before Jeff rudely interrupted me, that have momentum on their side in Dallas and Indy, and you have a division matchup in Seattle where they always play each other tough. The NFC West. Like, the betting angle for the NFC West is take the underdog in that matchup, and it's usually going to pan out for you. So, with that being said, the under is valuable. But at the same time, Kyler's a little hurt. D-Hop is not going to be in the regular season. You're getting Chase Edmonds back healthy. You still have a pretty good running back in James Conner and a defense that's still pretty aggressive and pretty strong. I'm not extremely bearish on them like Jeff is. For the betting side of it, I probably just stay away because they could easily come out and beat one of those 2 teams in Dallas or Indy, and then it leaves it up to Seattle. But I guess from a value perspective, the under is there, but I'm just going to stay away because I do think the Cardinals are still a good team.
All right, Pierce, the Cardinals are going to be in first place no matter what going into Week 16 because they hold that division record tiebreaker after they split the season series with the Rams here. So maybe winning division, is that a good bet?
I suppose I'm not allowed to take a Detroit Lions victory lap. I'm supposed to talk about the Cardinals.
Yes. Congrats, dude. Congrats.
Look, the Cardinals, they obviously were sleepwalking. They weren't prepared. We've seen some really good teams do this in previous seasons where they get that late season loss. They wake up and they regroup. The Panthers a couple seasons ago were going to be undefeated. They lost late in the season to the Falcons. So this could be a good thing. It really wasn't the worst loss ever. Detroit opens the game with an 8-minute drive. The Cardinals just missing a couple plays. At the end of the half, it's a 4th and 2. If they get in the end zone, it's 10-7 going into the half. They don't. Then the Lions get some roughing the passer calls. They hit some plays, and then it's 17-0 at half all of a sudden, and the game was pretty much over. I'm not going to overreact to that. If I do want to overreact and side a little with Jeff, it's that the Arizona rush defense is not playing well. This is a serious problem, and if that continues, then, it's going to hurt their chances of getting a good seed. It's also going to really kill them in the playoffs. They've got to fix that immediately.
Gentlemen, let's go to America's division here. Let's go to the division of the working man. That's the AFC South, where the Titans blew their chance to jump to the number 1 seed by losing to the Steelers. So Tennessee remains the heavy favorite here to win the division, despite its lead being trimmed to just one game over the Colts, who have better odds to win the conference, actually. So, Reed, which team do you like more to make a deeper playoff run here? You like the Colts or you like the Titans?
Well, the obvious cop-out answer is, well, it depends where they land, right, and what their path to the Super Bowl is. But, if we take that out in vacuum, I think the Colts have a better shot at doing this, right? They're just made for a large or for a deep playoff run. They have the best player and running back, probably the most valuable player when you break down that word. And we'll go to Pierce on the actual breaking down of vernacular in the NFL. But he has a touchdown in every single game since week 4, and their defense is really strong. We saw that this past week, that their defense gets you there. Carson Wentz is the question mark, but you got a Tennessee team that doesn't play solid on defense at all. They're void of running backs, despite what Jeff's going to tell you about Foreman, Hilliard, and whoever else is back there. They might get Derrick Henry back, and A.J. Brown's getting healthier, but that still doesn't mitigate the issues that they have on defense. So the Colts are positioned there. Having said that, they're an indoor team. If they have to go to New England, Kansas City, and play in the cold in the playoffs, that's definitely going to hurt. If they can get to that 3 seed and they can get home field advantage and play Lucas Oil as much as possible, then I like the Colts in this one.
Okay, Pierce, how we feel about this? You got the Titans minus 800 to win the AFC South, but they're just plus 1,000 to win the conference. Indy has a better odds to win the conference.
That's because the Sportsbook knows the Titans are frauds. Been saying it all season. The team has a good pass rush, and that's where the conversation ends. What else do the Titans do that's good? I don't know. They don't have receivers. They don't have a line. The line's been playing okay. That's not great. Donta Foreman had 100 yards yesterday against Pittsburgh. Big deal. He still lost the football game. Tennessee is not a good team. And what do we always say? Well, wait till Derrick Henry in December. Wait for Derrick Henry in the playoffs. It's wait for Jonathan Taylor in December. Wait for Jonathan Taylor in the playoffs. The Colts have a decent pass game. They have a good offensive line. They're a great running back. They have a good rush defense. And they have a pass defense that works pretty well preventing big plays. They are really well suited to make a major run and shock the world.
Oh, wow, Jeff. Listen, even if Derrick Henry recovers from his foot surgery in time for the playoffs, Tennessee may have already lost valuable ground to the top teams in the conference, and that's going to leave them a tough road to Super Bowl 56.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm not even going to argue. The Colts are the better team right now. So if you're looking at these odds, I think this is correct. Even with the Colts, look, there is still a scenario. We're all clamoring about the Colts and John. There's still a scenario where the Colts don't make the playoffs. I mean, there's 4 teams: Buffalo, Chargers, Ravens, and Colts. One of those teams aren't making the playoffs. So just keep that in mind here. As much as we're talking and we're building them up, they're like one loss away from being out of the playoff picture, right? So I do think the Colts are the better team right now. That being said, the Titans are nowhere near as bad a team as Pierce is making them out to be. Their defense has stepped up. They have the best rush defense in the league over the last few games. They can run the ball. All they did, they just basically gave the game away to Pittsburgh. If they just stop turning over the ball, they win that game by 10 points. They're still very live to win the AFC because the AFC is a complete crapshoot. They have wins over all the top teams this year, the Titans do. Derrick Henry, by the way, as the Titans insider, his rehab is going extremely well. He might even be back for week 18 if they need him. That's how well it's going, Pierce. All this Jonathan Taylor talk. Anyways, I actually don't mind getting on either of these teams for futures. I think you need to look at both of them. They both come with a little bit of risk, but you're getting the best odds. And I think both these teams are very live to win the AFC this year.
I mean, with the addition of a 17th game, a typically dramatic end to the regular season is likely to be even more thrilling. We're seeing that right now. There hasn't been a whole lot of clarity in terms of the playoff picture. We do know, at least right now, the Ravens 2 for 8 on 2-point conversions this season, which analytics alert means you're not very good at going for 2. Another cruel loss for Baltimore, moving the Bengals into first place in the AFC North, and Pittsburgh is just refusing to go away. On one hand, right, you give Harbaugh and company credit for hanging in there against the Packers with a backup quarterback and that injury-ravaged roster, but then on the other, 3 straight losses. They're now out of the playoff picture as of this very moment. You can get even money here, plus 100, for them to make the postseason. You like that bet, Pierce, or we're out on the Ravens?
Yeah, I've been out on the Ravens all season. This is probably my number 1, number 2 fraudulent team. They're not a good team. They needed a 66-yard field goal to beat the 500 Detroit Lions, if we don't forget. So, yeah, did they almost lose yesterday? Could they have won the last couple of games? Maybe. But look, the secondary of this team is completely injured. They lost another cornerback yesterday. Aaron Rodgers was just cutting through this team. Had a near perfect game. They scored 31 points. Good teams don't allow 31 points. They're going to argue that, well, the Ravens scored a bunch of points. They came back. The Ravens were down 14 points with 8 minutes left, and the Packers went into prevent defense. They were playing their linebackers 5 yards off the ball. That doesn't work against anyone, especially against a rushing quarterback. And so Huntley was able to run for 5-10 yards, dumped the pass off, and ended up scoring 2 touchdowns. The one time the Packers played defense at the end of the game was on the 2-point conversion, and guess what? They didn't convert. The Ravens are frauds.
All right, Reed, what would you be betting when it comes to the Ravens here?
Next year.
Yeah. We're turning you're thinking they're out.
Yeah, I mean, look at their last 3 games too. Like, yes, they get the division matchup with the team that's now in first place and the Cincinnati Bengals next, but they have the Rams and the Steelers. And what did we see with the Ravens and Steelers last time? Is that team always plays them hard, right? That team always leaves them battered and bruised. So if they finally get guys back in that last game of the season, they might lose more guys because this team just has that injury bug. It's been the Chargers for the longest time, but now it's the Ravens who are just not healthy. And Lamar Jackson, if he's in this game, and even if he was playing, could we have seen a different scenario play out? Probably not, right? Mark Andrews is fantastic, but when your tight end is your best player and that's pretty much it, it's going to be extremely hard to make a huge playoff run. They are probably a team that has gotten on the good side of variance early in the season, which is why their record is where it is. And Lamar Jackson is able to put his team on his shoulders for as much as possible. But and the play calling too, with going for 2 at the last second. I mean, you've heard it ad nauseum, right? If you're going for 2, and if you don't want to play OT, and if you want to win a regulation, you don't wait until the last play of the game to do that. You do it before. But that should be telling that Harbaugh doesn't believe that his defense and his team can win in extra innings if it's against a playoff caliber team like the Packers. So no, I'm out on the Ravens.
All right, Ulrich, Baltimore can jump right back in with a victory over the Bengals in Week 16.
Yeah, this AFC North, admittedly, like I almost want to make the argument that the Ravens have dived enough in the odds to make them like an interesting value proposition. But I think Reed and I think Pierce both alluded to things that just make me want to stay away from this team and keep staying away from it, as I've been doing. It's just they have no secondary, and their schedule is terrible. I mean, like the Rams, like Matthew Stafford is going to throw for 400 yards against this team. I mean, there's just no way. So basically, it's a must-win game last week, and then it's going to come down to them beating Pittsburgh, who, again, just always plays them extremely tough. I think you just stay away. They're interesting just because they have Lamar Jackson. I don't even really mind the decisions made by John Harbaugh. Yeah, it sucks that they missed both, but they make one of those 2-point conversions, and we're sitting here talking about them being in the division lead. So Reed's right. Like, they rode the right set of variance, and it caught up to them. And I just don't think this team has what it takes down the stretch. They'll probably lose next week just because Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, again, probably just have some kind of field day. So I'm still out on the Ravens. They have moved to the odds, though, if you're a real big Lamar backer, where I think you're at least getting, good enough odds to think about them.
All right, let's go to the NFC South here, where, less than an hour ago, Ian Rappaport said that Chris Godwin, he suffered an MCL sprain last night. I feel like everyone got injured last night. Uncle Lenny got injured. Mike Evans got injured. So Godwin's expected to miss the rest of the regular season. 3 games left. Injury reserve, he says, makes sense. Godwin should be able to return to the playoffs, which is obviously more important. Last night, Reed, the Saints get a huge win, shutting out Tom Brady and the hospital Buccaneers. Minnesota plays tonight, and the winner of Washington and Philly tomorrow will obviously move to 7-7. I believe if Minnesota wins tonight, they'll knock the Saints out of that last spot. However, after beating Tampa Bay, is New Orleans your favorite right now to land that 7th seed?
Yeah, probably, right? Because, if they can feasibly go 2-1 their last 3 games. So they have the Dolphins, Panthers, and Falcons, right? So Dolphins probably a tough out, but we know the Panthers and Cam Newton and the Falcons with Matt Ryan, essentially no one else on that team other than Russell Gage apparently can do well. And the Falcons are no longer using Cordell Patterson in positive EV plays for God knows what reason. And so when you take a look at those last 3 games, then yeah, absolutely. 9 wins probably gets you in that 7th seed in the NFC. I will say this, though. The Vikings, they're plus 300 to make the playoffs. And you're getting them before tonight's game. And if they win feasibly, right, against Chicago Bears, which they can do that, then that's a nice little bet because it's probably going to be a 9-win team that gets in that 7 seed. The Saints have the easier path than the Vikings, but Vikings not a bad play. But I probably side with the Saints here.
Ulrich, what do you think there? I mean, hey, doesn't sound like betting the Vikings plus 300 to make the playoffs to be all that bad, Mr. Kirk Cousins.
Hey-o.
No, it's pretty bad. Their schedule is terrible, man. I mean, they got to beat the Rams and like one of the Rams and the Packers to even have a shot. I'm not even like super bullish on their chances tonight, for being dead honest. This is a road game against the Bears, like in prime time. In prime time, Kirk Cousins, and we want him to just
he
go.
won last time out.
Like this is no automatic win here. So no, I'm not really in on the Vikings. I definitely am in on the Saints, though. I mean, I like the Saints. The Saints may not be fun to watch with Taysom Hill, but you know what they do? They win games. They won games last year with him too. They were 4-2 with him as starting quarterback, and now they take on a Dolphins team who, they rode a hot defense for a couple weeks. Their offense is terrible. A Panthers team who's just terrible all around. And then an Atlanta team that's terrible. They're probably going to go 3-0 to close out the year. They might allow like 10 points in their next 3 games. No, the Saints are easily favored here. And I'd actually be semi-surprised if they didn't close out with 3 wins.
Okay, Pierce, how much you like their plus 120 odds here to get a wild card spot?
What are we doing? The Saints lost 5 games in a row. We're allowing 30 points per game.
They hadn't made the Taysom Hill switch yet.
If the playoffs started today, they're in. If the playoffs started today, they are in.
Look, they won against the Jets. Cool. They beat Tampa Bay, and Tampa in that game lost their
the best team in the league. They beat the best team in the league, but let's just brush it off. Sure.
They beat the best team in the league that was missing their best 3 players, and that best team in the league was still moving the ball.
Wait. So Tom Brady's not a top 3 player on the Bucs? Okay.
He can't. Who's he going to pass to? You think he's going to run the ball on his own? He fumbles in the red zone. They nearly won that game without those stars. Hey, congratulations, the Saints won that game, but it doesn't give me any confidence in that team moving forward that they're going to win some divisional games against teams that would love to be, play the role of upset. The Eagles are still the team. The Eagles have won 4 of the last 6. The Eagles have a breeze schedule. They're a huge favorite against against Washington. They're going to probably be a favorite against Washington again in a couple weeks. They're going to play the Giants. They might play a Dallas team that's going to sit players. Philadelphia is well rested. While half of the league is hurt or injured, they're coming off the bye. The Eagles are in a really, really good spot, and I just don't believe in the Saints team.
Interesting, Pierce. Okay.
Pierce needs a boost. It's his daily boost.
Hey, guys, thanks. Hang out, though, because we're going to need to break down the Monday Night Football doubleheader later this evening. But first, over the weekend, we did kick off bowl season, which means the college football playoff is right around the corner. So let's check in with our good friend Ross Tucker, who joined Steve and Julian last week on the Unreasonable Odds podcast, see who he likes in the playoffs.
Ross Tucker from the Even Money podcast. Before we get you out of here, we're going to switch over. Bowl season starts Friday at noon on the East Coast, the Bahamas Bowl. But that's not the one we're going to talk about. We're going to go to the college football playoff. We're going to talk about the real stuff right here. My wife doesn't know that these games are on New Year's Eve yet, and she's going to be very disappointed when I'm in front of the TV all night. We got Cincinnati, Alabama, Bama, 13.5-point favorites in that one. And then the nightcap, Georgia. This just switched on DraftKings Sportsbook. It was 8. Georgia's now even money, laying 8.5 against Michigan. Snuck in there by beating Ohio State and winning the Big Ten. Let's start with the early game. Cincinnati gets in. What do you got on Cincinnati, Alabama? I assume you got Alabama winning, but 13.5?
Yeah, by the way, I don't like that these games are on New Year's Eve at all. And I already told my wife she wants to go to some country club thing. I'm like, that's fine. I'll be at the bar at the country club watching the TV. I'm going to be asked about these games all week the next week. Like, I can't not watch the game. Right. So you can do whatever and talk to the lawyer and the doctor. I don't care. I've met him before. I will be watching the TV in the bar. And I like both dogs.
Really?
And maybe this is my SEC bias. I don't know. But Cincinnati has some legit dudes. Like, this is the thing people don't realize about Cincinnati. Their corners are 2 of the top 10 corners for the NFL draft. Their D-end is a day 2 pick. Their quarterback's a day 2 pick. Like, this is not a group of 5 team that doesn't have the horses. They have a lot of horses at key quarterback, edge rusher, and your two corners. That's pretty good. Bama loses Mechie. That hurts. Yeah. So I like Cincinnati in the point. I'm sure Alabama will win the game, but 13.5 points is a lot. I mean, I saw with my eyes Cincinnati beat Notre Dame by 2 scores. And I saw last year's, was it Peach Bowl, where Cincinnati should have beat Georgia. And by the way, that Georgia team is the exact Georgia team that's playing this year. It's all the guys that were coming back this year. And Cincinnati should have won that game. So I like Cincinnati in the points quite a bit. And then I'll take Michigan and the 8.5. I think that's a close game as well. Michigan's style of play and Georgia's style of play lends itself to a lower scoring game,
45,
which I think favors
points on the total.
Michigan. There's a reason why the total is 45, which is low in college football, but Michigan's DNs are awesome. Their defense is good. They're going to try to pound Georgia. I don't know how that'll go. I think Georgia wins a close one, but Georgia's not lighting the world on fire offensively these days. So I would take the points there as well. I guess you could tease. I have never even done college teasers, but you could tease Georgia.
People say not to, but
interesting.
If the situation is right.
Interesting.
Because these college games, they can get away from you, it feels like, more than
Yeah. All right, well then don't do that. Listen to Julian, not me. Just take the underdog in both those games.
What do you know? I'm curious. Where were you going with it? What was it going to be?
Teasing Georgia down to -2.5 and still think that they win the game.
Right. Okay, I didn't know. I mean, also you can get now Michigan up to over 2 touchdowns. You can get them to 14.5.
That's a good point.
On the other side too. All right, Ross likes the dogs. I'm an SEC guy. I think we're going to see Bama and Georgia again. Obviously, those are winners, not spreads. But I don't know how Michigan's going to score too much on Georgia. Georgia's defense has to step up after letting Alabama kind of embarrass them.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do think I do think it'll be Georgia Bama, and I really hope Georgia beats them. Georgia has a mental hurdle when it comes to the Alabama Crimson Tide. They just can't get over it.
Yeah, that would be a cute story. What you don't know about me, Ross, is I didn't go to Alabama or anything, but I am a Bama guy. I just bet Bama. So all my futures would not be in great shape if that happens. So
go Dogs.
Roll Tide.
All right, let's put the show on ice here. We got an NHL panel here for some opening face-off. Roto Wires, AJ Scholes and Paul Bruno. AJ, you are looking like you were in the spirit today, and I am happy that you are bringing some positivity to the table, because what was originally going to be a 2-game slate in the NHL tonight is looking more and more likely it's going to be just one. There are reports that Columbus and Buffalo is likely to be canceled tonight. More COVID issues for the NHL, so that would leave just Minnesota and Dallas. We're just going to focus on that game. And again, everybody, keep an eye on the DK Live account on Twitter. They're always tweeting out the most up-to-date updates. So hook me up with your captain play for Minnesota, Dallas, AJ.
Well, I really like Kirill Kaprizov in this game in general. I mean, he's been lights out lately, but he's just so expensive when you compare him to some of the other options. I'm going to avoid the goalies in this one as a captain play just because I'm not confident it's going to be necessarily a low-scorer game. So for me, I'm going to look at Matt Zuccarello coming in at 12-3. So a little bit of a discount compared to some of the other guys. He's got 6 points in their last 7 games, including 4 tallies with the power play. So it's really good value without having to pay that astronomical price for a guy like Kaprizov. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to keep Kaprizov out of my lineup. I just think he's too cost prohibitive to captain him tonight.
Paul, who is going to earn 1.5 times the salary, but you also receive 1.5 times the points in return?
Yeah, Kaprizov is kind of the obvious choice, but you're going to pay for him. So I'd rather look elsewhere and kind of going with the hot sticks for both clubs. So you consider Rupe Hintz leads all skaters with 8 goals his last 13 games. His line mate, Jason Robertson, is next with 7. Marcus Felino is the top gun in Minnesota with 8 goals in his last 13. So that's all in the last month. They've been pretty good. For me, though, the pick is Joe Pavelski tonight. I'm surprised AJ didn't go all over this with his connections to Wisconsin. I'm going to say that Pavelski picks up his pace of 7 goals and 9 assists in his last 11 games, plus 175 the payoff there on DK to score. I think he's the captain choice for me.
All right, Paul, who else is going to be lighting the lamp in this Wild Stars game tonight?
Well, you got to look at the whole first line of the Stars as a threat. Robertson, Hintz, and Pavelski, they've been really on fire of late. All three of them are very capable scorers. If you want to go a little bit deeper into the roster, of course, you got the guys that used to run this team, Sagan and Ben, paired together as well in a second unit. So a wealth of options there. But for me, the focus is going to be on Minnesota. This is a team that's better than Dallas, quite frankly, and I think they should handle this game quite easily. So I'm going to lean on the top line there. Looking at Zuccarello, like AJ said, was a great idea. And I think the center on that line, Ryan Hartman, is kind of the underrated guy of that offense. And so I like him to be a guy that I'll be focusing on this evening.
AJ, talk to me.
Yeah, I mean, Paul mentioned Marcus Felino. He's been just as hot goal-wise as Kirill Kaprizov in December. Both those guys have 4 goals. Felino, for his part, doesn't have the assist, so the point total isn't exactly there. But I do think Marcus Felino could be an option in terms of showdown slate. You're looking 5,200 for him, 340 on the DK Sportsbook for anytime goal scorer. And then one other kind of sprinkle for Dallas that I like, Denis Gurianov is going to play on the second line with Ben and Sagan. Now, those guys have not been anywhere near as productive as they were in previous years. But to get a guy where you can go plus 275 on the DK Sportsbook, if you're looking that route, or in Showdown, you can get him for just $5K. I think he's in a good spot as a potential goal guy tonight.
Hey, AJ, over on the DK Sportsbook, I'm looking at some plus money here for the Wild, plus 100. Stars favorite at minus 120. Who's going to win this game?
I like Minnesota tonight, even without – I would take them as the favorite. I'm a little surprised that they're not. So getting plus, even money on the money line is a great spot to be in. I actually like looking at the alternate puck line here and taking Minnesota minus a goal and a half. That's how much I'm confident they're going to win. You get plus 225 value when you take them minus that goal and a half.
All right, Paul, whose odds do you like the most to win this one?
Well, look, the Stars come into this game after snapping a 5-game losing streak, and their last game was a 4-3 overtime win against Chicago. They sit 6th in the Central Division, only 2 games above 500. The class of the loop is Minnesota, so people sometimes forget about that when looking at matchups, and I think that has to count for something. The Wild had an 8-game win streak, but they've been on a bit of a slide last 3 games. I think they're going to bounce back, and I think the visitors have too much offense and are a far better defensive club than their opponents. So I'll take the Wild to win at even money. I think that's a very nice bet tonight.
All right, still looking for some news here for Columbus Sabres. If that game is confirmed to be canceled, I'll tell everyone once again, DK Live. Follow it on Twitter. Follow these 2 riveting RotoWire gentlemen also on Twitter for the latest, greatest news around the NHL. Guys, thanks so much. Have a good rest of your day. We'll hopefully talk to you tomorrow when we hopefully have more games. We do have 2 in the NFL tonight, and we'll talk about that, DFS and sports betting side of it coming up. We did NFL overreaction with these 3 earlier in this show, but right now we're going to go ahead and dive a little deeper into a couple Monday Night Football games tonight. Yes, that's right. Because of COVID, we have 2 Monday Night Football games and 2 Tuesday Night Football games tomorrow night, but we'll just focus on MNF now. Let's go. DFS and sports betting preview of tonight's Raiders, Browns, and Vikings, Bears game. Hello, Jeff. Hello, Reed. Hello, Pierce. Welcome back. So 2 showdowns this evening. We got a 2-game classic. So lots of options here. We'll make it easy for you. Who was the best DFS play tonight, Jeff?
Well, who's left? I mean, who's left to roster?
I can't confirm. I'm glad you brought that up. Baker Mayfield, Case Keenum reportedly did not test out a COVID protocol. So you're looking at Nick Mullins tonight. Go ahead and tell me why you believe he's the best play.
I actually don't think he's a bad play, but I don't think he's the best play. I feel like Hunter Renfrow is a guy you can rely on here. I mean, this is a player who, obviously, you know, with all the losses that the Raiders have endured over the year with the receiving core. I mean, Hunter Renfrow has been the steady arrow, the guy who just shows up every week and gets, you know, now he gets 10 plus targets every week as well. Over 20 DK fantasy points in his last 3 games. And I mean, look, you know, normally Cleveland isn't a defense we necessarily want to be targeting, but you know, I don't think there's going to be a ton of points scored in this game, but I do think the Raiders are going to have to pass the ball to move the ball at all. And I think Hunter Renfrow has proven that he can get open against anyone. I think you take the 15 plus points here that you're not guaranteed, but you're in a very good spot to get, and you move on, because I think this game will feature a lot of slow pace. I think this game will see the clock burn off fast. And I think the one guarantee here is that Hunter Renfrow will get a bunch of targets.
All right, Pierce, trying to look at all the salaries here and find someone who's around like $300 who you say is the best play.
Well, that's the truth, though. I mean, if we're looking for point per dollar upside, then no one's better than Justin Fields in this spot. He's got rushing potential. He's going to pass the ball. He's obviously going to have the ball in his hands for most of the game. Justin Jefferson can have a big game, but you got to pay up for Justin Jefferson. Justin Fields is where you go. He's played well in his last 3 full games, 29, 19, and 21 fantasy points. They changed play calling. And if you look around him, it's really his development. The offensive line's still terrible. His receivers aren't any better. Montgomery, rushing the ball definitely allows the balanced offense and maybe gives him a little bit more opportunity. But either way, it looks like Fields is playing better. He's scrambling a lot more now late in the season. He's going to scramble again tonight, probably get you that 70-yard rushing floor that he's shown over the last 3 games. And as I mentioned the other day, when he faced Green Bay, a team that eliminates deep passes, and he is a deep passer, averaging over 10 intended air yards per pass attempt, he completely changed who he was. He took what he could get. He had an intended air yard per pass attempt of 4 yards a pass. That is a huge change in approach. I think it's a developmental leap. And that's the kind of stuff that he's going to need to do against a pretty tough Mike Zimmer scheme tonight. And I think he can get it done.
Reed, haven't heard anyone mention Justin Jefferson yet, who has scored more than 25 DK fantasy points in 3 of his last 5 games.
Yeah, I think these guys are getting a little bit too contrarian. Like, Hunter Renfrow is fine. And Justin Fields is also fine. He's 4th in big-time throw percentage as well, and that can move the ball down the field. But at the same time, he doesn't pass enough, and his legs, they're like, he can get done with his legs. But yeah, we haven't mentioned Justin Jefferson, who's just a target monster. He's 8,500 though, so to get value back at 3x, he's going to have to do pretty much, you know, a little bit higher than what he's done on the road. Nick Chubb against the Raiders, a lowly Raider run defense. Also, who else do the Browns have except for Nick Chubb? But I'm actually going somewhere else. The Jets' favorite player, Kirk Cousins.
Yeah!
Kirk Cousins, let's go. On the road, and I'm talking about showdown and DFS, right? Because it's not just the best player, it's the best value, and that's why Hunter Renfrow was chosen. That's why Justin Fields. Let's talk about value here for Kirk Cousins at $6,800. If you're going on that main slate of the 2 games, he's averaging 23.2 points on the road. That is 4x his price right now. The guy has thrown over 2 touchdowns in the last 6-7 games. So there's value there on the prop side, and he gets a Chicago defense that hasn't really played well against quarterbacks not named like some lowly 2nd or 3rd string quarterbacks, right? Against the Houston Texans, against the bad teams that Chicago defense has played against. Look, Kirk on primetime, you can read me all the stats on that. The last time he was out on primetime, which is not too long ago, he won. Mm-hmm. They won. Yes, he gave up a bad interception late, but they still won. I think in this matchup, it's Justin Jefferson, it's Dalvin Cook, and Jefferson too is this guy's 2nd on the team in red zone targets and 10th or 11th in the league in red zone targets. I think Kirk Cousins is going to have a big game.
Dude, he ranks 6th in passing yards, 5th in passing touchdowns, has the league's lowest interception percentage.
16 touchdowns to 1 interception on the road.
It is incredible. That 1%, league's lowest interception
so incredible
percentage.
that the Vikings are actually going to miss the playoffs, and that's how incredible. Everyone's just so shocked in Minnesota that they're like, we're not even going to go to the playoffs this year.
Absolutely not.
Kirk Cousins is playing so well.
Abby hammering plus 300 Vikings to make the playoffs all day long. Easiest money on planet Earth. Raiders and Browns again, guys, postponed from Saturday. Again, Nick Mullins to be under center for the Browns. So Raiders are missing Waller. Are we looking at an under here in this one? 40.5 right now, Reed.
Yeah, I don't think Captain Planet Renfro is going to do nearly enough.
He's been on fire. He's been on absolute fire.
Yeah, I'm surprised that we didn't talk about Hunter Renfro at the top with you, Emerson, since he's on your fantasy football
Yeah, I'm not
team.
like Jeff. I'm not a fraud. I'm not a fake and a phony.
Like, look, the Raiders, other than that penalty-ridden game that they played on Thanksgiving with Dallas, where they got how many calls going their way and 4,000 penalties where they scored 36, they haven't scored over 16 points since week 9. It's been very, very bad for the Raiders offense and the Raiders defense. While they can give up points, the Browns have Nick Mullins, and they don't have Jarvis Landry. They have Nick Chubb. They're going to run the ball 30-plus times. Dearness Johnson probably going to worked into this game as well as Kareem Hunt on the COVID-19 list. So, yeah, give me the under.
All right, Ulrich, I know you're Mr. Over typically. You leaning that way?
Yeah, typically. Unfortunately, we don't have a typical spot or a typical slate or a typical anything this week. No, I like the under here. And this one is moving. It's moving close to getting under 40. But I really think that's where it should be. I think that's where the line should be set. I mean, you've got a Cleveland team here. You know, the last time they were without Baker Mayfield at quarterback, they played what was essentially like I think it was a 14-7 game, and they ran the ball like 22, 24 plus times with Dearness Johnson. Sorry, it was 17-14. And they played another AFC West opponent there in the Denver Broncos. And I think the big factor here is too, it's not just the Cleveland side of the ball that we know is going to be conservative. It's the Raiders. I mean, this is a team that's really struggled over the last couple of weeks, and they struggled because they don't have their best receiver in Darren Waller in the lineup, and they can't run the ball. So, you've still got a decent Cleveland Browns pass rush going up against, Derek Carr, who's not very good under pressure and doesn't have his best receiver. How are the Raiders going to score here? No, you keep hammering the under here until it gets to a point where you just don't hammer it anymore, but it's not there yet. Wait till it gets under 40.
Pierce, it's a super low number for this day and age in the NFL, but with everyone missing. Also, freezing conditions, stiff blowing wind coming off Lake Erie here. Yeah, under?
No one does the trends better than Reed T. Fowler.
Yeah.
T stands for trends, but let me try. Here is a trend for you. Last 8 times that the Browns are in a game with a 39.5 to 43.5 under, the game has gone under. 7-1 the under is. So when the sportsbook says the Browns and their opponents aren't going to score points, they typically don't score opponents. And if it's going to be cold and one of those northern Ohio days, I don't think that Las Vegas is going to play very well. Las Vegas, Reed kind of went over that Thanksgiving game. They're 3-3 to the overs and unders. Well, the 2 other games that they went over, that was because Kansas City scored 40 points or more. Kansas City isn't here to score 40 points today to help out Las Vegas. Their offense is not good. The Browns' offense is incredibly depleted, but they still have some key players in the defense that are going to keep them in. I mean, we've seen this game go from Browns 6 to Browns dogs by 6 to now they're just down by 3. I think the Browns defense and the sportsbook believes that this Browns team can compete, keep this thing pretty low scoring. This is going under.
Hey, Pierce, other than their 24-point quarter last week against the Packers, the Bears have struggled the past few games on offense. Vikings haven't scored less than 26 since, week 9 here? Do you have Minnesota covering at 6.5 right now? They're the road favorite. They've been terrible at covering, especially against bad teams, but I don't know, the Bears are even worse, right?
Yeah, the Vikings are 7-5 against the spread, which isn't great, but the Bears over the last 8 have been even worse at 1-7 against the spread. And I mean, you can throw out the trends. The only trend that you need to know in the NFL right now is, are your players healthy? Are they able to play? And the Bears are without Khalil Mack. They might be without Akeem Hicks, Roquan Smith, Danny Trevathan's out. They have 7 defensive backs that are not going to play in this game, and that includes their starting cornerbacks and their starting safeties. I mean, we kind of buried the lead. We like Kirk Cousins. We like Justin Jefferson normally, but we really like them when they're facing a team that doesn't have a secondary. We've been saying this for the Ravens and other teams. When they don't have secondaries, they get destroyed. This is setting up for a really good game for the offense. And I know I like Justin Fields, and I think he can put together some good drives, but I also think there's going to be some bad drives. There's going to be some Mike Zimmer disguises and blitzes and coverage schemes that are going to cause problems, and they're just not going to be able to keep this game within a touchdown.
Jeff, we know the Vikings have been very up and down this season. One of just 2 teams to lose to the Lions this year.
Yeah, ooh, rough. Look, I don't think you need to throw out all the trends for this game. I mean, Minnesota, going back to 2019 under Mike Zimmer, is 8-14 ATS after a loss. Yes, this team is up and down because their head coach is up and down, and they don't respond well to winning. They never have with Kirk Cousins. Yeah, look, Pierce is right. The Bears are dealing with a bunch of myriad of injury issues, but as bad as the Bears defense is going to be against the pass, guess what? The Vikings don't do anything good on defense. They're bottom 5 against the run. They're bottom 5 in terms of yards per pass attempt against too. Like Darnell Mooney could easily go for a long touchdown here. This is just way too many points to be giving a Vikings team that has been terrible at covering in this spot and doesn't have a good defense. I'll be dead honest. My favorite play for this game is the over 45 or 45.5, whatever it's at right now on the DraftKings Sportsbook. But if you're asking me who I'm taking on the spread, there's not a chance I'm trusting the Minnesota Vikings to cover here. I think Justin Fields will put up some points against this defense. And if the Bears do good, get out to a lead, like David Montgomery could just run the ball a lot too. So I kind of like the Bears here. Wait and see if we can get up to +7 because I think that's where it's headed by game time.
Yeah, total 45.5 right now. Fowler, Vikings should be well rested though. They've had 11 days in between games.
Yeah, it's really good for Dalvin Cook. I mean, if you're looking at his props or if you have him season long, you really like that. And to Jeff and to Pierce's point, like with the Vikings, it's a little bit harder to trust, right? And like even though they got guys healthy and the Bears don't, look at the Vikings. You know, in their last, I don't know, every single game this season, it's been a 1-score game, and they've lost on like last second drives or they've won on last second drives. So for them to be a touchdown favorite, I think it's a fool's errand. I think the Bears getting 6.5 points is definitely there. We talked about Justin Fields. He's a guy that got 2 passing touchdowns, so we'll talk about it in a little bit, against the Green Bay Packers defense. And while it might have been a variance of sorts, it still begs the question that the Bears still have a guy like Justin Fields and players on the outside that could attack this pass defense. Rashad Breeland got cut earlier this week, getting into a verbal altercation. And he was a starting cornerback and had some of the worst stats at that position. So that just goes to show you that this defense against the run, against the pass, not very good. So give me the Bears covering, but the Vikings still winning.
Okay, Reed, favorite player prop in this game, Vikings Bears.
Yeah, I'm Cole Kmet under 30.5 receiving yards is probably where I'm going at. Look, all the ancillary stats are fine. Like he's getting running a lot of routes, getting targets on his routes per run, but right now, his target share has slowly decreased. I think it's 16% team share over the past 4 weeks per PFF. And even though we feel like Fields gets to commit a lot, it's not necessarily for those bigger plays, right? That's Darnell Mooney, like Jeff laid out. Allen Robinson, if he can stay healthy, he's someone that I like as well. I want to attack the outside. And Minnesota's defense, if there is a good spot, it's their defense against tight ends. They're top 5 in defending tight ends, meaning that they give up like the 5th lowest in terms of points and production to the opposing tight ends. So under 30.5, Cole Kmet.
Jeff, what do you got?
Yeah, no, I definitely think if you're looking at Kmet, like I like the over on the receptions, but I agree with Reed. I don't really want to bet on him over receiving yards because he catches like 4 yards a pass. I do like attacking Darnell Mooney's over though in the receiving yards. He's 53.5. You can just take the over there. Again, no Allen Robinson. He's had a couple slow games, but like the downfield targets are there. Justin Fields connected on some big plays last week. It just wasn't with Darnell Mooney. I think that switches here against the Minnesota Vikings pass defense. We've already kind of rallied about how bad they are at giving up plays. I think you can go to the player props on the DraftKings Sportsbook too if you're looking for a little bit bigger odds than just the regular minus 115. You're getting to take the over, or 110. You're getting to take the over on his receiving yards. You can go Darnell Mooney, 125 yards plus a touchdown, plus 1,500 tonight. I like Darnell Mooney in this spot a lot.
All right, Pierce. I have producer Drew dropping in Slack. JP Holtz plus 1,600 to score a touchdown. Highest odds.
Am I allowed to say who's that? Wait, who we got?
Yeah, it's JP. Okay, yeah. No, I had to look it up too.
I'm going to give you guys a reasonable pick, and then you drop something like that on me. Justin Jefferson over 94.5 yards. I know the number seems high, but if you look at his game log, with or without Adam Thielen, he's still going over 100 yards quite frequently, and that's in normal matchups. This is a game where I don't think Thielen's going to play. If Thielen plays, he's going to be extremely limited, and they're going to face a Bears secondary, which we already talked about, which is extremely depleted. So give me Justin Jefferson over 94.5 yards. He might get over this in the first half.
JP stands for John Paul, by the way, and he played college football at Pittsburgh, which I'm sure Samir behind the scenes loves. Need you quick here on Slate Approved Pick. Favorite bet on the board between these two games, Reed?
Kirk Cousins over 1.5 passing touchdowns, minus 165. He's 10-3 hitting his over prop in passing touchdowns.
Pierce.
Kirk Cousins over 259.5. Look at his primetime stats and ignore the Thursday night short week slates. Primetime stats are through the roof against a terrible Bears secondary.
Oh, this is incredible. Go ahead, Ulrich.
I mean, whatever. We're going to be here talking tomorrow about like a 200-yard, 3-interception game for Kirk Cousins. Now, it's clear. I like the over in the Minnesota Vikings-Chicago Bears game. It's two bad defenses. I think you could even parlay it with an under in the Cleveland Browns-Raiders game as well.
Absolutely incredible work, you two, especially by Pierce and Reed for their Slate Approved picks tonight. We're going to wrap up the show. We got one more break to go, one more block to go. NBA Building Blocks with Jules, and Mr. Meiselman is next. All right, we're going to bring it home with some NBA chatter. We got a panel here, DraftKings contributors Julian Edlow and Matt Meiselman here for some NBA building blocks. So your favorite DFS plays at the following positions on tonight's 6-game slate because Orlando and Toronto has been postponed. Jules, who would you consider building around at guard?
Yeah, obviously everything is a moving target right now. So we need to pay attention. We need to be following the DK Live app, and news is probably going to keep coming at us quick. But as things stand, I don't mind going back to Tyrese Halliburton, who's coming off a pretty big game on Sunday. Kings playing on a back-to-back. Now they're pretty sizable dogs against Golden State, so I guess you have to watch out for a potential blowout here. But Halliburton's the guy for the Kings right now. No De'Aaron Fox. As well as some other major names in Sacramento's rotation. He scored 42 or more DraftKings points in each of his last 3, including 54 in that last game, which is when he really had the show all to himself to run. So I think all that usage is going to be there again. Young player that kind of plays behind other guys in Sacramento, so this is his time to shine. I'm not really concerned by the back-to-back. I would go right back to him.
Maddie.
So I like that call. I actually like that game. So I think Steph Curry really is someone who's worth paying up for. He's pretty expensive at $11,800, but this is most likely going to be a slate where we have a lot of value just because that's every slate these days. And there's a lot of questionable players across a bunch of different games who, if a few of them get ruled out, there just really aren't players left to pay up for. So that includes Paul George. It includes Jason Tatum. And Curry might just be one of a few guys left that really do have an appealing pay-up price tag. And then also Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins, both out for this game for COVID protocols. So there's just more for Curry to do. And I think like this game probably should stay close enough, just given that the Warriors are a little shorthanded, even though the Kings are too. But I think that there's at least a lot of upside for Curry, even if you do have to watch that blowout potential.
Matt, who's worthy of building around at the forward spot there in your lineup?
So a couple cheap guys on the Warriors could be appealing. Nemanja Bjelica, Otto Porter, but the guy who could go under the radar and it could wind up being a really good spot for him is Jaylen Brown. because we have Jason Tatum and Dennis Schroeder both questionable. Brown's price tag looks really high at 9K, and if the Celtics are relatively healthy, that's just not a price you want to pay for Jaylen Brown ordinarily. But you take those guys off the court, and I think Brown maybe even becomes a top 3 player overall on the slate, and you'd be getting him at a huge discount off guys like Curry and Embiid and George. So just watch for Celtics news, but Brown could wind up being a really high-end option for this slate.
Jules, talk to me about someone you'd build around at forward.
That's exactly where I was going to go, actually. So I like how Matt's thinking. I was going to say, you see that Q next to Jason Tatum. I think with the Celtics so shorthanded, the expectation is probably that he just kind of has to go. We're kind of seeing a lot of these guys that actually have injuries who in the modern NBA are with load management. They say, oh, take the night off. Well, when you have 7 guys in COVID protocol, we can't do that anymore. So guys that are questionable are playing now that would normally be given the night off. So I lean towards Tatum playing, but that's what I was going to point out. If Tatum's off the floor, or even if it's just Schroeder, there's so many guys that are out for the Celtics right now that Brown's going to have to do some serious heavy lifting. And if Tatum becomes one of those guys that's out, then yeah, Brown is going to be in a really strong spot against what is also a shorthanded Sixers team.
Jules, this is when you shine, when you get to talk big and beefy. So take me to the 5 spot here. A center who is worthy of building around.
Thank you, Emerson. This is my wheelhouse. I'm going Nicola Vuchevich. The Bulls are back up and running after being shut down. Vučević had a pretty solid game against the Lakers. DeRozan actually led the way for them, but the matchup against Houston, it's at home in Chicago, not a good team, and a team that really struggles defending size. I think this could be a triple-double watch for Vučević. I think he's in a really good spot in this game.
All right, Maddie, Rudy Gobert, good spot.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of centers that are worth paying up for. So I think it's tough. Like Vooch is a good call. I think Gobert is worth playing. Embiid, if you have some other, I mean, even without any other Philly news, Embiid is just always worth looking at. And no Al Horford on the Celtics side means Embiid's got a good matchup too. I'm going to go a little cheaper though. We do have one kind of minor injury on the Clippers, and that's Isaiah Hartenstein is out. And I think that just means a lot more minutes security for Ivica Zubac. And then also, if Paul George doesn't play, the Clippers really don't have the bodies to run their small ball lineup that they ordinarily would. So George actually could affect Zubac in terms of minutes, but I think there's a lot of upside here. Like we've seen, if Zubac is playing really well and the game script kind of sets up where the Clippers don't need to space the court, he can play 30-plus minutes. He's only 4,900. So I think that he could be a pretty high upside guy on a slate where most of the center options that people like are expensive. I think one cheap guy, that's one spot to go.
It feels like there's a lot of elite players in this slate, and really you should have no issues rostering like 2 or 3 of them. But Matt, if you were to consider building around a value play, who would you go with?
So we have to watch this Philly news because Danny Green and I think it's Tyrese Maxey are both questionable. Yeah, it's those 2 guys. And they have a bunch of other players who are out mostly for COVID protocols. A couple are actually hurt. So we have Isaiah Joe and then Charles Bassey and then Paul Reed. I don't know which of these 3 guys might start or play extra minutes, but I'm basically just pointing out that this is a situation to monitor where the Sixers could be really shorthanded behind their core guys like Embiid and Harris and Curry. And then the rest of the roster might be guys that people haven't really heard of, like Reed and Joe, I think maybe are the top 2. Would not be surprised if one of them winds up starting. So I don't know which it is, but monitoring the Sixers for value, I think this is the best source for it on the slate right now.
Julian, value play.
Yeah, I'll go to the game that we talked about off the top in the spot that Matt was talking about, Golden State without Andrew Wiggins and Jordan Poole. I was kind of between going with Halliburton or Curry as my guard. You can obviously fit both with all the value on the slate and kind of game stack there. And then also go to the Warriors perimeter with Wiggins and Poole out. So, Andre Iguodala makes me a little nervous. He's older. They don't want to play him too many minutes, but he just had 34 DraftKings points in 24 minutes in Boston. He almost has to play more. Otto Porter could be playing more. He's a guy that I like a lot. And then maybe they let Jonathan Kuminga get into the mix a little bit more. He played 36 minutes the game in Toronto that everybody sat and looked really good. With Poole and Wiggins out, there just has to be more on the perimeter to go to, and any of those 3 names really jump out to me as good value.
All right, gentlemen, we are out of time. Thanks so much for helping us build our lineups with your building block recommendations. The Sweat is back tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock Eastern time to high noon. We got Madden Sims kicking off here with the Chiefs and the Seahawks. And then the slate, 5 o'clock on YouTube and Twitch and Twitter. Brendan Glasheen, Jeff Ulrich. And you, Maddie Meiselman, you got a busy day ahead. So we'll see everyone later.